Welcome to Inside Outside, a podcast that explores educational interests from both inside and outside of education. I'm Jeff Bailey, the Education Insider.
And I'm John Gonzalez, the Education Outsider. Jeff and I are excited to explore various topics related to education from multiple perspectives.
Whether you're a student, teacher, parent, or simply someone interested in the world of education, this podcast is for you. We'll be deep diving into the latest trends, innovations, and challenges facing education today, examining them from both the inside and the outside of the traditional classroom setting.
We'll be speaking with a variety of guests to gain a better understanding of what's working and what's not in education. Our conversations will cover a wide range of topics, from technology and innovation to equity and inclusion and everything in between.
Our goal is to spark meaningful conversations and encourage new ways of thinking about education. We welcome you to Inside Outside.
This episode, we're taking a closer look at ChatGPT, the AI technology that has taken the world by storm and put educators on alert that big changes are coming.
Which makes it a perfect topic for us to look at on this first episode of the Inside Outside podcast.
You and I have been talking a lot about AI and this chat feature and how it impacts education. I know you're going to be talking to our teachers soon more about this. So let's run through some of the presentations, some of the things you're going to talk to them about. Let's start with this first idea of that. It kind of, if you use this chat GPT, it's going to kind of reveal some things about you as a teacher, right? And your students a little bit.
Absolutely. I think it definitely makes a difference or helps to identify that type of teacher. Some people, the first time you talk to them about this, their immediate response is, well, that's fine. We'll just go back to paper and pencil. And then other people, when you take a look at it, they're like, oh, wow, this is really cool. This is kind of going to change the way that I do things. And I think the happy medium is just that. It's in the medium. It's in the middle.
It's in the middle, yeah. But I think that you at the beginning of any kind of new thing, you have to kind of go all in, because if you don't, you might miss some of the reasons why we're doing it. So let's start with do you even know what ChatGPT stands for? Is it like generative pre-trained transformer or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I think what it means, I actually still have a hard time not calling it Chat GTP, and it's Chat
GPT. Yeah.
So, it basically,
what is it?
Basically, it's a large language model, which isn't really any clearer. Basically, they've taken all this data, pretty much everything on the internet since 2021, and trained it to respond to questions in natural language. And it actually is quite, to me, it's really quite stunning when you think about that, because we've all had interactions with artificial intelligence. We've called on the phone, talked to Verizon or whatever, and they're asking you a set of questions, and you talk, and it responds based on what you say. But when you actually start to get involved with ChatGPT and you're asking it questions, and it's responding in perfect, flawless language, you realize how different that really is.
Right.
But it's trained on basically everything on the internet. It out Googles Google when you really stop and look at it, because, you think about when you put a Google search in, you get a whole list of items and then you have to sort through them. Chat GPT, when you ask it a question, it sorts through everything it knows about that topic and then spits back a response based on your questioning.
So you have to do some work on the front end. I mean, you still have to ask the right questions, or ask the questions you want answered, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the biggest thing in this, is that the questions you ask are going to be the most important part of it. And I was an English teacher, and one of the techniques I started to identify was that as we worked on getting kids to learn to write and write effectively, I figured out that, hey, we can ask them. Really, what they got to do is think about what questions does my audience need the answers to, and so they'd write those questions out, and then we would have them write the answers in a paragraph, and then I'd be like, hey, take the questions out. And they'd take the questions out, and really what they needed to write was already there. So that structure was already there, but it was really based on the questions you ask. And ChatGPT really works along the same lines.
I guess one of the things that I was always taught. I mean, it's funny because as a journalist, I come from a journalism background, right? So we're asked good questions. If we ask good questions and get detail, we'll have a good story. If we ask garbage questions and we don't get a lot of detail, it's going to be a lame story.
Absolutely. That's definitely, the point here is that, the questioning is the most important thing. It's the work that goes into like thinking about what it is you're trying to communicate. And ChatGPT actually requires you to ask good questions. So if you don't ask a good question, you're gonna get very general information, which is a lot like what I expect you when you talk about journalism in the same way. Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out. Right. So to me, as an educator, if I were an educator, I guess I am in a way, I would find this exciting.
Yeah, that's the only way to look at it. When, I think when people aren't excited about it, it's when they hear about what, on the news, or they only scratch the surface. And then you want to run for the hills because, everything we've ever done has changed. And that's actually really true. This is a game changer. And sometimes people say, oh, it's like when the math teacher's in the calculator, but it's not. This is actually upends everybody's curriculum. Math teachers, English teachers, social studies, and we have religion teachers. Every teacher, what they do has been changed
because of this, right?
Yeah, because of this
technology. Yeah,
because a lot of the things we've asked kids to do for all these years, can be done in 15 seconds.
That can be, but that's on the other hand, that can be pretty disruptive. It can be if you're used to doing your lesson planning for, let's say, the last 10 years a certain way because it produces the results you want. This could be intimidating in a way, right?
Yeah, it can be really intimidating. And we talked about the philosophy, what kind of teacher you are. Yeah, it really can be, disruptive. It can be scary, but I'm not sure that, that's the way you should look at it. The way, I'm going to look at it is this is really going to force me to really think about what is it that kids need, to learn. What is it that kids need to be successful in the future? And I think a lot of our educational standards are based on things that maybe maybe we should have learned in the 80s, or maybe how, people want to measure learning. But is that really what we need to be successful? And to me, the best example of it is when we start thinking of, I was an English teacher. A lot of English teachers spend a lot of time with grammar and spelling and vocabulary. And when you start to look at a model like this, you start thinking, how important are those things when the machine will correct those grammar issues? The machine will identify spelling errors. And really, is that what we really want our kids to be doing?
Right.
Do we really want to be picking on them about grammar and spelling, and not necessarily just what they're trying to communicate?
No, I think these are good points. I love that you have that background as an English teacher, but you also said something in your presentation too that kind of made me think a little bit. You were talking about that if you're honest, much of the work we ask students to do is already based on an algorithm. I thought this was a really interesting context a point that you brought up.
Oh yeah, the best example of this, and everybody listening has learned to write on the 5-paragraph essay.
Yeah.
Did you write the 5-paragraph essay, John?
Oh yeah, of course.
Now, and I think about, nobody writes a 5-paragraph essay. There's no place in your adult life that you'll ever write a 5-paragraph essay, and it's really. I taught a college freshman composition course for many years. And the first thing I would say is everything you learned in high school, that was garbage. Just forget about it. And I felt bad because I was teaching high school. I was going back to my day job teaching kids to write that 5-paragraph essay. And, kids were always like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we're always teaching kids to write that way because that's really... we're trying to teach 100 or 125 kids in a day, how to write, how to communicate their thoughts, but in the most basic way possible. So you're trying to, it's kind of a one size fits all method. And it's, people feel like they can be relatively successful with it. Oh, we teach them how to write a thesis statement, and then they're going to have 3 topic sentences, for each paragraph, and then they're going to have a summary conclusion. And somewhere along the line, that writing will be good. But in my experience, that writing was almost never good. That's really an algorithm. It's there's a specific format to it. It's always going to be the same. It's always going to have a hook in the introduction. The conclusion's always going to have some final statement, maybe a call to action. So those are very prescribed things. And so it's easy to teach, and it's easy to measure too, because what do you have at the end? You have a rubric. You have, here's what I'm going to look for. Here's how many points those things are. So, teachers are using them, it's really, so what we're doing here is cutting out the middleman.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess your whole point is you want teachers to embrace this technology and find ways that they can use it to benefit all students. So is it out of I guess possibility, the realm of possibility that the teachers would have students walk in and the students would teach them how to use this?
That the teachers should totally be teaching. I hope that's what you said. Teachers should,
that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Teachers should totally be teaching kids how to use this, because this does a lot of the most basic work. I mean, if you want kids to still write a 5-paragraph essay, you can say, hey, ChatGPT, will you write me a outline for a 5-paragraph essay, defending this or explaining this, and it'll write the outline for you. I mean, it'll write the essay for you. It'll write a summary of the essay for you. But do we need to spend time teaching kids to write an outline? That's the question that would come out of that. If a machine can write an outline for us, do we need to do it? No. If the machine will write the 5-paragraph essay for us, do we need to do it? No. I mean, why should we have kids doing a thing that a machine can do and do really well? I mean, I've been playing around with this for several months, and I keep looking at it like there are things that I do that are just a waste of my time as a professional. And I think you could probably be honest that we do spend a lot of time doing tasks that are sort of repetitive. And this is not a professional task, but so at Christmas time, everyone writes a Christmas card letter. So I wrote my Christmas card letter. Well, the opening and the closing are of limited value because it's always like, oh, hope you find your family happy, blah, blah, blah. And then the conclusion is very similar. Well, I had ChatGPT write the intro and the conclusion for my letter. And I just copied and pasted them on there, and it wasn't perfect because this writes in a very generative way. It's not totally personalized, but I was able to go in and edit a couple things on the introduction and edit a couple things on the conclusion, and it was perfect. It saved me 10 or 15 minutes of time. So I'm looking at it like, why should we ask kids to do things that have limited value that a machine can do for them?
Right. By the way, Jeff, I did find what Chat GPT stands for. It's Chat Generative Pre-Training Transformer. There you go. Chat GPT.
And that's why they call it Chat GPT.
That's why it's down with you're down with Chat GPT. There you go.
Actually, the most valuable thing of that whole thing is chat. That a lot of people don't really realize the power of this is that you can ask it a prompt, and if you don't get what you want, you can literally follow it up with like a text message to it or a chat saying, "Hey, could you do this instead?" And it remembers what it had told you before and then alters it automatically. And so it really models that skill that we really want kids to be able to do. Like, okay, so this didn't work out for me really well, but let me rethink what I want and ask the question, and then it'll refine that answer further and further. And that's really a skill that we want kids to be able to have. They don't get the answer they want, so then they ask a question. And then if they don't get the answer, they further refine that question. And maybe they have to look at it in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I think you summarized it well in your presentation, where you have Chat GPT won't end any kind of instruction that shouldn't have ended. If you can put a prompt into it and it produces a possible response or passable response, why ask students to do it?
Yeah, and I think this is really, I really struggle. I'm going to be honest with you. This is probably the most important thing to me is that there are things we ask kids to do a lot of things that, really aren't that valuable. And we've done them because they're traditional. And you said it earlier to me that this is really where there's going to be a lot of pushback, because we've come to hold things important that really probably aren't that important. And we also do tend to think of ourselves as being a better judge of this content that kids create than we are. I had a teacher, when I first showed him this, when we first started talking about this, I took one of her prompts and I put it in and I had it write an essay, and I said, well, how will this do in this your class? If a student turned this in, what would happen? And the immediate response was, well, I would be able to tell that was not written by a student, but it would probably get a C. And I said, well, that's exactly the problem that you have, is that's a passable response. So kids are going to want to be able to do that. Well, this teacher will then tell you that she had her students write an essay, and then within minutes of getting a few of them, she started to think, well, these are not, I don't think the student wrote these. I think these might have been, done by AI. I told my wife I was doing forensic work, going through right. These essays. But yeah, you could really see where, kids found a way to cheat. And actually, Chat GPT says it's not cheating, because the work is generated by their questioning. And so whatever the machine creates is really their work. So there's ethics there too. But so it, even though we were already talking about this is coming on, it came on a lot faster than, that students were going to be using it. It came on a lot faster than we thought it was going to come on.
Well, I think the implications are far-reaching. I mean, didn't we have someone on the Senate floor do his whole speech written by AI, the Chat GPT? I can see where a priest might enter the prompts that he wants for a homily, you know.
Oh yeah,
and they could write the sermon for him. I mean, it's far-reaching.
yes. I put one of our religion department standards in to ChatGPT, their learning standards, and I said, okay, can you create a lesson for this standard? And it did. It created a lesson that I thought, actually, yeah, that's a pretty decent lesson. Well, then the problem I looked at it is, we work at a Catholic school. So I didn't think the lesson was Catholic enough. I thought it was very generic, religion. And so I said, hey, can you make it more Catholic? Now, I do find it funny that I'm talking to a computer saying, hey, can you do this? And then it did. It went back and refined its lesson and made it more Catholic.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you're right that the uses of this are tremendous.
Yeah.
And we really have to look at that ethical side of that. I think that's where a lot of people come up to that it's wrong. That we're cheating but think about your own life. When do you learn the best? I'm putting the questions on you now. When do you learn the best, John?
I learned the best. That's a good question. I think I learned the best when I just like, what I call it is it's a baseball analogy, but it's like you clear your head from everything, right? And you just kind of like say, forget everything I've learned, right? And really ask the basic questions like, what am I trying to accomplish here? What's the best way of getting from point A to point B, right? And you kind of like forget everything you learned and just relearn it. That's when I learned the best.
Yeah. So the most valuable thing you said there is, what do I need to learn? A lot of education is kids don't understand what they have to learn and why they have to learn it. So there's really no connection. I was a terrible math student in high school. And as an adult, like most people, I would tell you that I probably haven't used most of the math I've learned. But in those instances when I've really come upon a time where I use some kind of geometry or algebra in my life, I've thought, wow, I wish they could have explained it that way, because now I understand why I needed to know that or what I needed to learn. But, most people want to learn, but they want to learn what they need to learn. I don't want to say I don't want to say they want to learn what they want to learn, because that lets people off, and then like, aha, yeah, but they don't know what they need to learn. Well, most of life is learning how to learn what you need to learn.
Yeah. Hey, let's get real quick. Let's get real quick to wrap this thing up. What ChatGPT can help students with? I thought this was a really interesting thing you put together, or did you put it together?
Actually, I didn't. So I actually asked ChatGPT, like, what can you help students do? Okay.
Yeah.
And the responses are pretty clear. Writing and composition by generating text and providing suggestions for grammar, vocabulary, and style. So it'll actually take something you've written and it'll give you suggestions on the grammar, vocabulary, and style of it. And very specific things. It won't just say, correct your grammar. It'll give you specific examples of it. Homework, help, and explanations in a wide range of subjects. This is actually really exciting for me because, school can be 24/7. We actually have our kids in Canvas 24/7. They're doing their work. They're at home. They're have questions. ChatGPT can actually provide tutorials. So you can say, hey, tell me how to do this math problem. Or can you explain this scientific theory in like you're talking to a fifth grader. because that's about how I feel. I understand some of those concepts.
Right.
It can research and do information gathering by finding information, just like Google. It can provide tips and strategies for studying and exam preparation, including creating study schedules. So you can say, hey, I'm really terrible about this. I have to have this paper written. What can I do to get it done in 2 weeks? And it'll give you like a step-by-step plan. I actually worked with our principal and I said, we were really talking about how can we do this process where, teachers, do X. And it literally gave us a 9-week plan for how we can work through our teachers with that. And that's something that, the power of this is that it can take all the knowledge that it has. And, my principal and I, we could talk about this topic for week after week after week, hours and hours and hours. This can do the thinking for us in 15 seconds, and then we can refine that to fit our particular situation. That's an exciting part of this. It can provide career guidance. It can do personalized and on-demand assistance in a variety of. So that's just some of the things that ChatGPT, says it will do. Interestingly, if you ask it what it will replace in schools, it'll give you a whole list of things, but it says it'll never replace teachers, because kids are always going to need teachers to provide that deeper push.
Right.
ChatGPT, it doesn't really know anything. It has a lot of information, but it doesn't really know anything. It's really, it says it's a total bullshitter.
Right.
If you've ever met somebody who can just totally make up stuff on the fly, well, ChatGPT has all this knowledge and it can just make stuff up. That's why they say it's not entirely accurate. You really have to look at it as a professional. And that's the part, teachers are going to know what is going on in their classroom. I would always tell you, if you're talking about plagiarism or whatever, I felt like as an English teacher, I was very accurate in looking at a student's work and knowing if they had done it or not, because I knew that student. I knew what their skills were. I knew what their abilities were. I knew them as a person. AI can't do that. And so you need that human part of it.
Getting back, Jeff, to what you said real quick about this. So I was doing some research when you're talking about how students, actually enjoy this type of learning, right? There was a study done where they asked students about working with chatbots, and the feedback was tremendous. 85% in the survey admitted to having felt more comfortable and relaxed conversing with the bots over a student partner or a teacher, as in classical teaching. And the study says that this is because chatbots not only ease the education process, but also ensure qualitative learning, but that it is not all they are limited to. There is so much more that chatbots do for the education industry. So I thought this was an interesting take on students actually like conversing because they're used to it, right? They're used to chatting with their friends over their social media platforms.
Well, yeah,
it's natural to them.
It is very natural to them. And, to me, what's really exciting about it is, so if you give kids work to do, okay, they're going to, if it's something they really are excited about doing or really feel like they need to learn, when you get them on that chat, and I've had this happen with myself. I actually showed my son this the other day. And the thing you like is that you ask it that initial question, and then first of all, you're reading all of that stuff. And I would tell you that most teachers will tell you kids do not want to read the things that we're giving them to do in class. But first of all, they're reading that response and they're like, oh, no, that's not what I want. Let me rephrase my question. And so all of a sudden you're engaged in this really personal conversation with a robot.
Right.
But really, where is all the interaction going on? It's in you, because you're looking at this content and then you're and then you're asking it, is that what I need to know? Nope, that's not. I need to ask it to reframe that. So to me, that's the really exciting part of it. I mean, as students students will do anything to avoid doing work that isn't valuable. But if you give them something that's valuable to them, or they see the value in, they're going to do a lot of work. People want to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's truly what I believe. And that's really where the education system, the professional teacher is going to look at this and say, how can I use this to deepen the learning I ask kids to do, but also to personalize it? We've been asking schools to personalize learning in a really unfair, unrealistic way. I mean, how do you personalize? I wrote that. I had my kids write that 5-paragraph essay because how do you personalize learning when you have 30 kids in a class and you're trying to teach them to write and to think? Well, you end up doing it in the most basic way possible. Education needs to change in a lot of different ways. Grading in a school, and that's really a conversation we're having in our school right now, is what are you grading kids on? But grading should be based on how well students communicate their learning, and not how well they student. And I put students in quotes because there are certain expectations you have for a student. And if they fit that algorithm of what a student is, then they do really well. What we really should be looking at is how well do our students think? How well do they communicate? How well can they learn? And by learning, I mean, how do they face a problem? What do they do with it? I think we need to work on giving students work that is worth doing. We really need to look at everything we do and say, is that work that's really worth doing? Is that something they're going to do in college? Is it something they're going to do in a career? And I think for a lot of it, we look at it and like, yeah, I said it already. There's a lot of math we learn that we're never going to be doing. Why do we still teach it? Why do we still cover it? Well, that's because it's always been that way. But we really should look at how can we teach kids the math and the thinking skills that they're going to use in their life at a deeper level. My take on all of this is that every teacher is individual and every teacher has sort of different philosophies, but every teacher should be looking at how they're going to change their class. How are they going to shake things up? How can, as a teacher, can I give assignments that are personal and focused on thinking and teaching kids to do that? How can I make students show what they've learned? Are students going to be doing more podcasts? Are they going to be creating videos in your class? Are they going to be doing presentations? All of those will show understanding of the concepts you want to teach in your class. Now, are they easier to teach? No. Are they clean? No. I mean, it's going to be messy and uncomfortable, but I mean, if we're really talking about kids learning, that's where you learn. I mean, that's where you learn. Yeah. How many times I say it all the time. You learn mostly by failing, or failing forward. The other thing is, kids do need to learn to write. There are a lot of things they need to be able to do. So how do you make sure they do it without using ChatGPT? Make them show their work. Show us the steps of the process. Exactly. Yeah. So, and a lot of it is teachers need to value the process of learning from point A to point B, not just at point B did they, pass the test.
Well, all this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate the time. I think we're going to be doing more of it because, this is just the beginning of a major cultural change in all aspects of life.
Teachers have to remember they have the ownership of their class, but part of ownership is adapting with the times and improving the learner experience, because the future is not the same as it was when we were in school, even 5 years
No
ago.
question. Yeah, even 5 years ago. Hey, Jeff Bailey, thank you so much for the time. Great talking to you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, John.